Good morning, everyone. We are so happy to have Marchionna here today presenting this session called Implementing Culturally Responsive Teaching Strategies in the in the middle school word language classroom at PSMLE's first ever virtual conference. My name is Edith Gay. I will be hosting today along with Melissa. The session is being recorded. If you are tweeting or posting on social media, we welcome you to include at PSMLE1 and hashtag at PSMLE21 so we can see and share all of your thoughts. For attendance purposes, please be sure that your displayed name matches the name used to register to the conference. If you are unsure how to do so, you can send me a message in the chat and I will be happy to provide you with instructions. Please join me in welcoming our presenter today, Maria. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you very much, Edith, and thank you to all of you for being here today and for taking time out of your weekend and out of your Saturday morning to attend this session. Can you just give a thumbs up if you can hear and see me okay before we start? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So welcome to my session. Here we're going to discuss some practical strategies to just kind of go forward thinking more mindfully and more consciously of how can we teach our content of a world language in a culturally responsive way. So first I want to introduce myself. Again, my name is Maria. I teach 7th and 8th grade Spanish at Fort Couch Middle School in Upper St. Clair School District. Upper St. Clair is a suburb of Pittsburgh. And I have worked there for, I want to say 4 school years. This is my 11th year total teaching. Very much enjoy it. I recently graduated from Pitt with my master's in education, world language education, December 2020. So I'm also somewhat affiliated with the University of Pittsburgh. When I'm not teaching, I like to cook, I like to travel, as I'm sure we all do. I love yoga, Pilates, meditation, and I recently bought a house. So that has also been keeping me busy. And my favorite Halloween candy, since it is spooky season, my favorite Halloween candy is Twix. Has a little bit of everything. So my teaching context, just so you all have an idea of where I'm coming from today, at my school, French, German, and Spanish are offered. My school is only 7th and 8th grade, but students actually choose their language of study at the end of 5th grade. So at the end of 5th grade, they choose what they're going to commit to for 6th, 7th, and 8th. And then that kind of equates to 1 year of language study because they do only have world language every other day. So that just kind of gives you an idea. Most students are ready to go into level 2 when they get to the high school. The curriculum that I use is primarily based in comprehensible input techniques. Can you give me a show of hands or some type of gesture if you use any comprehensible input techniques or if you are familiar with that style of teaching? Awesome. Oh, wonderful. Fabulous. Yeah, so we kind of recently transitioned to that curricular style within the last few years. And we've had to obviously adapt it to health and safety regulations and things of that nature. But that's kind of the examples that you're going to see here today are based in comprehensible input. My examples are primarily in Spanish. I do have a few French examples as well, but I think any of this stuff can be adapted for any level of learners. So here's my professional goals for us today. Discuss the need for culturally responsive teaching, talk about what a culturally responsive classroom looks like and how that can kind of cultivate culturally responsive learners in our students, and then share some practical strategies that we can use to teach in a culturally responsive way. And then also talk about what are some school-wide things that we could kind of implement. So before I go any further, I do want to just clarify that I am by no means an expert on this topic. I just want to share practical applications that have worked for myself and for my colleagues at the middle school level. I also am not selling anything. I do not sell things on Teachers Pay Teachers. I do make some of my own materials, but primarily I use Somos, the Martina Beck's materials, as well as some strategies from Tina Hargadon, Bryce Hedstrom, some of those comprehensible input, the CI posse folks. So I just wanted to say that before I proceed. So let's get into it. So what is culturally responsive teaching? You are probably already teaching in a culturally responsive way, which is awesome. And really the way that I interpret culturally responsive teaching is kind of being able to fuse the content culture or the target culture of what we are delivering to students, fusing that with students' own cultures. And when I say cultures, I want to make sure we are all on the same page that culture goes so far beyond just what languages they might speak at home, what their heritage or background might be with their family. So thinking beyond just those basic definitions of culture, maybe also considering the surrounding community, considering the trends, the hobbies that kind of go along with Gen Z. I obviously focus on Gen Z specifically because that's the students that I teach, and even learning styles. So one way to kind of get a little bit deeper into the culture of your students could be to just give a get to know you survey or a get to know you form. That could be done at the beginning of the year. That could be done now, whenever you see fit, just to gather a little bit more information and then kind of tailor that to what you plan and what you deliver to your students in terms of your lessons. I will say if you plan to give a student survey, just check with your district to see if they have a certain policy with what you are or are not able to ask. Emily, I see you have a hand raised. Is that correct? You can unmute if you, I don't know if that was from earlier or if you just raised a hand. I'm not really sure, but feel free to.
Sorry, that was from earlier. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't ignoring you. So how does culturally responsive teaching benefit? I mean, this really goes for all subject areas. And I will say culturally responsive teaching techniques are not the only way to achieve these goals. But I think a lot of it does have to do with promoting acceptance, breaking down generalizations, especially teaching middle school. Students do tend to stereotype, generalize, and they get really into finding out things that they might actually are contrary to what they've thought in the past in terms of who speaks this language, or in terms of just different cultural things that they get in their mind, one concrete thing, and making sure that we break down or challenge any assumptions or generalizations that students have about the language that they're learning and about the people around the world who speak that language. So, like I said, you are already probably teaching in a culturally responsive way or doing some of these techniques or strategies because our content area naturally lends itself to teaching culturally responsibly. But just kind of going forward, having that mindset of being more conscious in the visuals we use, in the stories we tell, and making sure that we allow our students to even see themselves in the stories and visuals, even though we are focusing on a different culture and a different group of people, kind of bridging that gap. So here are a few kind of general strategies for the classroom. I prefer collaborative learning groups in terms of grouping and seating. I'm not able to do that right now because of health and safety, but kind of consciously grouping students together, or maybe making an effort to pair students up who aren't necessarily friends, who might need to get to know each other or who can learn from one another. Icebreakers and conversation starters. I have some examples of those later in the presentation. Possibly coming up with a class mission statement and displaying that in your classroom, and including an FVR library. Can you give me a show of hands if you have an FVR library in your classroom, or some type of library with stories? All right. So if you're not familiar with FVR, it's essentially kind of like chapter books that are written in simple language for novice to intermediate learners, but the content is more appropriate for middle and high school. So it's not a children's book necessarily. The content and the subject matter is of interest to middle school and high school. However, the language itself is pretty simple and used for novice learners. And I like to make sure that the books that I have in my library show a variety of interests, a variety of subject matters and topics, a variety of people's stories from all different backgrounds, so that any student can find something that is of interest to them and that they can connect with. And the way that I use this in my classroom is about 5 to 10 minutes a week at the beginning of class. Students select their book, they come in, they pick their books, and we do essentially silent reading for 5 to 10 minutes, and everyone's reading something different. It's very much personalized, and the students actually really enjoy it. It's kind of has a mindfulness piece to it. And it's a great way to start the class. So if you are not familiar with FVR, it stands for free voluntary reading. And if you just Google FVR or you Google free voluntary reading, there are tons of resources and information about it. One of the main websites that sells that stuff, again, I'm not trying to sell you anything, but one of the main sites where I've gotten my FVR readers is called Fluency Matters. So if you want to jot that down, Fluency Matters is a really great resource for that material. I'm just going to pause really quick to see if I have any questions before I move on. All right. So if you are doing anything that is targeted towards social emotional learning, you are contributing to a culturally responsive classroom. One of the things that I like to do is I give my students feelings words or emotions words, and we do a daily check-in just in the target language. How are you feeling today? What's going on? Asking students and kind of even prompting students to have those conversations with each other in the target language, just super quick at the beginning or end of class. That could be one way to, yeah, thank you, Melissa, for typing the Fluency Matters. That could be one way that you could just kind of promote some emotional social awareness. I have had great success with classroom jobs. It really gets kids invested and they feel like they contribute to the class. It also makes my job so much easier in terms of the daily routines of the class. So I highly encourage you to seek out what Tina Hargaden has to say about classroom jobs, because that's kind of where I started with it. Again, I haven't really done too much of it this past school year or last school year because of our health and safety regulations. But when I tried it, those kids want those jobs, especially in middle school. If you can get them on board right from the beginning of the year, it makes things run so much smoother, and it really creates a community within the classroom. Also, just making sure that you check in when you are telling a story or delivering a movie talk. Examining how the characters might feel and why does really fit into the social emotional learning piece as well. One other option is to include some mindfulness techniques. And I have noticed that since I have incorporated more comprehensible input style into my class, that kind of naturally lends itself to being a more mindful person, especially when we kind of model or teach our students how to listen and or read something and try to understand. So just kind of incorporating brain breaks. Obviously, we know, especially at middle school, students do need breaks. I try not to do an activity for more than 10 minutes at a time as kind of a general rule. The free choice reading, or the FVR, is also a very mindful activity because the room is very quiet. Students are focused on what they are reading. I like to put on like really calming music during that time. Even having small group question and answer, like I said, the feelings check-in, or kind of maybe doing a this or that, like a slideshow with questions. You can even give your students the language, or pull a question out of a cup and ask students for preferences, or what they would you rather, almost kind of allows them to just connect with one another while still using the target language. The screenshots that I posted here, the look and listen and learn, that is from, I think that's kind of an adapted poster from Tina Hargaden's classroom rules. So if you're looking for like mindful expectations or mindful classroom management techniques, look up Tina Hargaden's classroom rules and classroom management style. It has been quite effective for me. And then my other screenshot that I have at the bottom is a website that my students love. It's called donothingfor2minutes.com. And they literally do nothing for 2 minutes. It actually plays like a soothing wave sound, and it's just in between, kind of as a transitional activity or in between activities. If you have someone who chooses the brain break, or if you have a brain break kind of menu, they always ask for, oh, can we do nothing for 2 minutes? And actually, if you go to that website, it really is just type in donothingfor2minutes.com. And it's funny because if you go to the site and you move your mouse, it actually says like, try again, like you did something. So you can't even touch the computer. It really encourages you to just take your hands off, kind of get back to the moment, get back to the present. And my students really enjoy it as a brain break. I'm gonna also pause here just to see if anyone has a question or has another suggestion to share of something mindful or social emotional that they have had success with in the classroom. If you prefer not to share out, you can also type in the chat, right? Edith and Melissa, does everyone have the capability to type in the chat? So if you have something to share out that your students enjoy, please feel free to type it. That could be something that applies to social emotional, something that applies to mindfulness. I would love to hear about it. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I can't see your name, but I do see that you have your hand raised.
Okay. Hi, but in my classroom, I like to incorporate mindful moments. And this year I've been calling them stress-less strategies. And so I'll offer different strategies, you know, week by week, and then have the kids practice them. And eventually we move into like a mindful moment where we'll take a minute at the beginning of class and have that period of silence to kind of recalibrate from the last class to move into the next, to our class. Yeah.
I love that, especially because I feel like our students, like their day is just go, 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 not allowing for a pause to just have a moment. So I really appreciate that. I actually wrote that down, stress-less strategies. So thank you for sharing. All right, I am gonna keep going. Here is where I got this from advancement courses. I actually took an advancement course last year on culturally responsive teaching. And I love this resource, this conversation starters. You don't have to write these down if you're interested in them, because I can share my presentation with you. So I will put the link to this presentation in the chat at the end. It's just a Google, you're welcome. It's just a Google Slides. So I will be happy to share that with you. But I love this because we could easily translate some of these into our target language and kind of have that even as a mindful moment or as a brain break, kind of pull the question out of the cup and do a quick partner conversation or small group conversation. Obviously, being able to give students the language and even give them choices, whether that be forced choice or multiple choice, to allow them to answer and allow them to stay in the target language. So I think this is a great resource, these conversation starters, and I will share that with you when I share this presentation at the end. Okay, so now I'm going to get into actual world language content-based, more curricular-based strategies. Again, I think for the most part, these are pretty practical, and they may be some strategies that you are already employing in your classroom. So obviously we know that teaching the target culture through the target language is the most valuable and allows the students to really get a lot out of our class. Just to reiterate, the curriculum that I'm most familiar with over the past few years that I use is SOMOS, New Somme for French. And our German teacher kind of uses a hodgepodge of comprehensible input, Deutsche Welle, a few other resources to kind of match what we do in Spanish and French. And I really do like this curriculum so far. I have a lot of flexibility with it, so we can kind of pick and choose what works best for our students. But something that I do like about it is that there is culture already embedded in the lessons, in the curriculum, with the target structures or the target vocabulary. So if you are not familiar, I encourage you to check it out. I think she has a lot of free stuff as well. But I'm also interested to hear from you if there is another particular resource curriculum-wise that you feel kind of does a really good job with connecting the culture with the language. And I'm sure there are other curricula that I'm not familiar with. So if there's something else that you've used, or if you yourself use Somos or New Sum, I would love to hear that. So first I'm going to ask about Somos or New Sum. Can you just raise your hand or give me some type of little gesture if you are familiar or if you use that curriculum? Oh no, okay, cool. What do you guys use? Do you kind of make it up as you go? Do you use a specific textbook? Please feel free to type in the chat or share out. I would love to know about more stuff that has worked for you. Online resources. I have a, Melissa, I have a website that has a lot of really good culture stuff. I think it's only for Spanish right now, but it's called Learn Lit. It is free and they have a lot of really good cultural videos that fuse teaching culture through the target language. So I encourage you to check out Learn Lit. I'm not sure if they have other languages at this time, but they have awesome online resources with activities and videos. So I am going to proceed. I also think that if you have heritage speakers in your class, they can play a great role if they're comfortable sharing some of their experiences. And that also really bridges the gap between, you know, my students who are in a suburb of Pittsburgh, they don't hear Spanish much. They don't have that much real world exposure. So I really value when we do have heritage speakers in the classroom and sharing that experience. We know that middle school students can make generalizations and stereotype. I mean, any student can really, but middle school particularly. So I try to include a variety of representation in the speakers of the language that I teach. One resource that I really value that I've had great success with is Martina Bex's Afro-Latinos unit. It's kind of a mini unit, and a lot of my students had no idea what Afro-Latino was. And that it is kind of a group of people that, you know, choose to identify that way. And it has a very complicated, very nuanced history. I know that my colleague who teaches French does a lot with African Francophone countries and really giving students exposure to just representation of all people who speak the target language. Connecting students' own culture with the target language, like I said, we've gone over a few ways to do that. One of the ways that I like to do that has been successful for me is the special person interviews or star of the day. Have any of you ever done one of those, or have you heard of that strategy? So star of the day, thanks, Kira. Star of the day or special person can really, it's a very little prep. It can be as much or as little as you want in terms of how often you do it, how much of the class it takes up. The two that I have seen most often are Martina Bex and Bryce Hedstrom. Bryce Hedstrom's are free, and he has them on his website in a variety of languages. So definitely check his out. He focuses, I believe, on 5 questions, but the slideshows that are up there have way more than 5 questions. So like I said, you can make it as long or as short as you want, but essentially you are interviewing a student in the target language, providing translations if necessary, or providing whatever you need to provide for them to understand. And it can be a really great space for students to get excited about sharing, especially about their own family, about their own culture. So I just included this example of what languages do you speak. I've learned a lot about my students and their families just from asking that question. And then I included an example from German of where are you from? Where were you born? Just kind of giving students the opportunity to share. Another activity that works really well. Oh, thank you, Edith. Yeah, Edith dropped the link for the Bryce Hedstrom special person interviews in the chat. So definitely check that out. Another activity is calendar talk. I don't do calendar talk too often because my students only have my class 2 or 3 times a week. So I will do calendar talk maybe once a week, maybe every other week, and just kind of asking, you know, who's celebrating something, who's celebrating a birthday, who has this going on, who has a game, who has practice, just kind of giving students opportunities to share, because what do middle school students want to talk about? They want to talk about themselves and their friends. And as a follow-up to the special person interview and as a follow-up to the calendar talk, I will usually do a shared writing where I project a blank slide and students see me typing. I'm modeling maybe 5 to 10 simple sentences in the target language that summarize just what we talked about. And that goes in a slideshow that they can access through our online learning management system. I have it on the homepage. I call it class created stories. And anytime we type a story about a classmate, maybe what we learned about them from their interview, or about people of what we learned from them from the calendar talk, we make a 5 to 10 sentence story about it. I model how it's written and they copy it down. I would say I try to do this maybe every other week or once a week, but it's just a great way to model sentence structure and model writing for novice levels. So definitely give it a try if you are not familiar. I think calendar talk primarily traces back to Tina Hargaden and her resources. And the special person interview, like I said, I got that from Martina Bex and Bryce Hedstrom. Any questions at this time? Okay, great. I'm going to keep going. So here are a few more examples that kind of fuse our target culture with the cultures of our students. I have a lot of Jewish students, and we did a reading on Rosh Hashanah, and I cannot tell you how excited students were to share who celebrates, how their family celebrates. This was a reading that I got for free from Martina Bex. I believe I got it either in an email if you sign up for her email list, or it might have been on Facebook. I'm in 2 Facebook groups. One is the Somos group through Martina Bex and Alicia Cardenas. And then the other group that I'm part of on Facebook is the CI Liftoff group. So I'm gonna just put those in the chat. Facebook groups, Somos and CI Liftoff. Yes, thank you. Yeah, Mike Pito is also a great resource for some of that stuff too. I'm sorry that I didn't mention him, but he's wonderful. And then Tina Hargaden shared, as a free preview to one of her paid things, she shared this reading for desserts around the world. And it is amazing. I want to say it's 20 to 30 pages of different desserts, all in Spanish, all in the target language, beautiful images, very comprehensible. And then we had, after we read it, we had a class discussion of who prepares this, who eats this, who prefers this. And students were so excited, especially my international students. We have a really big population of Chinese and Indian students in my school district. And they just got so excited to see their home culture represented in Spanish class, which they probably would not have expected. One thing I want to talk about is movie talks. Has anyone ever done a movie talk before? Okay, cool. Yeah, movie talks are essentially, you can make a movie talk out of any YouTube video. You can make a movie talk out of a music video, any visual thing. So the way that I have done it is I have taken screenshots from a YouTube video, for example, simplified the language, typed up a simple story in the target language, very repetitive language. And I tell this story to my students. And along the way, I ask them to make predictions of what's going to happen. I ask them, you know, how does this person feel? Why do you think they feel that way? And I always try to leave the story on a cliffhanger. So for example, I did Hair Love. And when I did Hair Love, my Black students were thrilled to see Hair Love and to have representation of this dad trying to do the daughter's hair. And when we told the story, we left it on a cliffhanger. Is he going to do the hair successfully? Is he going to do as good of a job as the mom does? And then you show them the video that it's based off of with no pauses. You just let them view it and kind of process the story that they just heard in the target language that corresponds with this video. And I think typically the movie talks work best when there's a video with minimal dialogue, minimal talking, and it kind of has a mindfulness component to it. So I have used Hair Love. Another example that I have some screenshots of is based on a Disney, it was like a Disney short animated short that they used for Christmas time. And it takes place in the Philippines. We talked about these decorations that are featured in the video that are a Filipino decoration. We also then talked about Spanish's influence on Filipino culture. So just kind of having those unexpected conversations and unexpected connections were really, really eye-opening for students. And then I have at the bottom of this slide just some extension activity ideas for movie talks. There are obviously tons of things you could do with the movie talk. If you want a movie talk to be one lesson that lasts for one class period, that's totally fine. If you want to stretch it out and make a unit out of a movie talk, you can also do that. I've done both. So some of the extension activities that I have done of shared writing, where we type a class summary of the story, blind retell, running dictation, ordering the events, or I will show them screenshots and they have to either use whatever language they can to describe it or write a caption for it. I've done a close where I have some of the target structures missing and students will fill them in. I have used Edpuzzle kind of as a follow-up with the video. Edpuzzle, if you're not familiar with it, it plays a YouTube video and then you can insert questions that pop up within the YouTube video. And it is wonderful for tracking student progress and things like that. True, false, making predictions or kind of expanding on it and creating some embedded readings. If anyone else wants to pause and share a certain movie talk story or a certain movie talk extension that you are a fan of, I would love to hear about it. So feel free to type it in the chat or to share out and unmute yourself if you feel comfortable doing that. Okay, thank you, Edith, for letting me know there's 5 minutes left. I have a little bit more, so I'm going to keep going. This is just another example. These are from my French teaching colleague who really does great efforts to include all representation of French speakers in their lessons. These are from Perfecting Pedagogy. They're just kind of little mini biographies that she uses as a warm-up, or she'll do extension activities with them. She might use them for a unit on describing people or professions. So those are from Perfecting Pedagogy. And I wanted to include those because I think it's great that she makes sure to show representation in her class across her language. I do have a quick breakout room discussion, but we can just talk about it here if you feel comfortable. If you want to type in the chat or unmute yourself, something that you can take away from today that seems practical for you or that you want to know more about, or something that you already do that you now feel validated that you're on the right track to teaching in a culturally responsive way. So please feel free to share something that maybe you saw in my presentation that you'd like to try or that you'd like to learn more about.
I love the idea of the library. I forget what it was called. I have it written down in my notes. But I think that's a great resource because even me as a student, I remember always being like, oh, I'd love to read more books in French, but like, it's, I think, more encouraging if your teacher has that library available to you with some books already picked out that he or she would recommend.
Awesome. Yeah, my students get so excited about those books, especially because you might think that they are children's books, but some of the subject matter really is a little bit heavier and a little bit more able to grasp the interest of middle school and high school students, even though the language is pretty simple at a novice or intermediate level. And I typed the name of those books. If you search FVR or free voluntary reading, you will find tons of resources on that. Amy wants to try Calendar Talk and Star of the Day. That's awesome, Amy. I wish you all the luck with that. My biggest difficulty with that is time. Is definitely a limitation, but if you set a timer and set those boundaries and make the time for it, it is a really valuable tool. All right, I am going to wrap up here with just one really quick ending piece, and that is school-wide initiatives. So thinking of your school-wide culture and how you can kind of bring the cultural responsive piece to that. One thing that my school has done in the past when we were able to bring guests is we would reach out to local music and dance groups of international, all different international backgrounds, and invite them to our school. We invited them for an International Education Week that we do typically in the middle of November. And we have always had a lot of success with that. The students really look forward to it. And we actually kind of specifically tried not to bring in German, French, or Spanish groups because we wanted a variety, and we wanted to expose students to what they might not be as familiar with. So I just have a little example here of our invitation. 2019 was the last time we did it. Again, for health and safety reasons. We also did an international project with them where 7th grade researched international careers, 8th grade researched some information on different countries around the world, their products, economics, and they did kind of a gallery walk activity. And then one last piece is called No Place for Hate. This is a program that your school or your district can look into if they're interested. It's through the Anti-Defamation League. It's really based on improving your school climate through anti-bias and anti-bullying training. So if you feel so inclined to find out more about that, I highly encourage you to do so. And that is it. I want to say thank you all for being here today. I hope that you can take something away from my presentation. One thing I want to do is I want to drop the link right now to this slideshow. And it's going to be a view only kind of deal, but hopefully if you saw something that you liked or you want to know more about, go ahead and click that link in the chat that I just pasted. That is the link to my slideshow that I just shared with you all today.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. On behalf of PSMLA, we want to thank everyone for attending the session with Maria. We welcome and encourage your feedback on our session. Please use the link in the PDF program or found in the chat to give the session feedback. The recording of this session will be available to conference registrants after the event. As a reminder for teachers in PA, in order to qualify this session for Act 48 credit, you must complete the Act 48 reflection form. You can find the Act 48 form linked in the PDF program or in the chat. This form should be completed within 72 hours of this session. So thank you and enjoy the rest of our virtual conference. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Maria.
Yeah, thank you.
Goodbye.
Edith. Thank you, Melissa. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Hello, Jennifer and Jennifer. Jennifer, you are the presenter.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Jennifer.
How are you?
I'm Edith Gay, and I think John Grande is supposed to be here as host number 1. But since I'm here because I hosted the last session, I will will make you co-host. So you
That's
can
perfect. Thank you so much.
So you can try out everything, and you present if you want to share the screen to see if it works for you.
Yep, I'm doing that right now. Just have to switch over. Just present. My computer's getting there. It's been, I deleted a whole bunch of stuff yesterday. It's been so sluggish. There we go. Are you able to see my title slide?
Yes, ma'am. It's
Perfect.
fine. Looking great.
Okay. That's what we need.
Okay, I think we have, no, we Jen Campbell here. But
Yep, I'm here, but just as an attendee.
yeah,
So,
John is supposed to be here as host number 1.
okay,
I didn't leave the meet. I was the Zoom. I was in the first session in the morning as host number 1.
okay. Well, here comes someone. That might be John.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. John, is it you?
Might be. It says Zoom 3 conference.
Yes.
It is me. It is me. My apologies.
Hi, John.
Hi. The host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves is the message I'm getting. But
Oh,
you-
am I the host now?
Yes, you are.
Okay, let me see. Where do
Let me
I?
just make sure that.
Huh.
So, John, I'm going to.
You're going to go, Edith?
No, I'm staying with you, but you are now the co-host because I was hosting the first session, so that's why now you are the co-host.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And from my side, it says participants are allowed to unmute themselves.
Yes. yes.
Okay.
So, John, can you make me the co-host because I'm now you are the only host now with Jen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep. A definite learning curve, huh?
I know. The first session went so beautifully. It was so easy compared to the Thursday night. Thursday afternoon was a nightmare. Just the technology piece was poor
Yes.
Deborah.
I think it was for all of us. And you know, we're still recording.
That's true.